You're not lying down to sleep. You're volunteering for disintegration. These aren't bedtime thoughts. They're scalpels. And you're going to hold each one against the softest parts of your identity, wondering why sleep ever felt. Safe. Section 1. The mirror test of consciousness, and why you've already failed at you think you are awake. That's the first deception. Before your thoughts, before your opinions, before your ability to describe yourself, you assume something that a you exists to hold all of this together. But have you ever stopped to question when, exactly, that belief was formed, or whether it was ever yours to begin with? Let's start small, with a mirror. The mirror test was designed to measure self-awareness. A mark is placed on an animal's face while it's anesthetized, and when it wakes up, it's placed in front of a mirror. If the animal touches the mark, on its own face, not the reflection, it's assumed to recognize that the image is itself. Most animals fail. Infants fail until around 18 months. Chimps pass. Dolphins pass. Magpies even. But even in humans, this test does something cruelly fascinating, because even if you pass the mirror test, who is the you that's passing? Stare into your own eyes in a mirror for long enough, say more than 10 minutes, and you'll experience the strange face illusion, a real psychological effect where your own features distort, mutate, become demonic, animalistic, or simply unrecognizable. Your brain loses its grip on identity. Neurologists call it dissociative identity distortion. That's not a glitch. That's the curtain slipping, because the continuity you feel, this you who wakes up, gets coffee, scrolls through your phone, is not a single thing. It's a manufactured narrative, edited and re-edited, hallucinated by the left hemisphere of your brain, like a desperate novelist filling in missing pages. This isn't metaphor. The split brain experiments in the 1960s proved it. Cut the corpus callosum between the two brain hemispheres, and suddenly, one side of your brain literally doesn't know what the other is doing. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. One hand reaches to slap someone while the other tries to stop it. One side believes in God, the other, not at all. Which one is you? The psychologist Michael Gazzaniga studied these patients. After showing something to the right hemisphere, which can't speak, he would ask the verbal left hemisphere to explain what the body had done. It would fabricate a reason with full confidence. If the right side saw a picture of snow and the left side saw a chicken claw, the patient might point to a shovel for the snow and say, "Oh, I picked the shovel to clean out the chicken coop." The interpreter module, he called it, that part of the brain that makes up stories to explain what the body is doing. Even when it doesn't know. Now ask yourself, when you explain why you feel what you feel, want what you want, are you reporting, or are you just storytelling? You believe your memories are real, that they're a kind of personal history. But in reality, memory is reconstruction, not retrieval. Elizabeth Loftus proved this over and over. People can be made to remember events that never happened, just by suggestion. You've done this too. Misremembered something and then defended that false memory because it felt true. What does that make your childhood? In 2008, researchers discovered something they didn't want to: our sense of a coherent self across. Time is an illusion. People don't behave consistently. You think you're a good person, or introverted, or the type who wouldn't do that. But the fundamental attribution error proves otherwise. You believe your own actions are based on your personality, while judging others' actions based on their context. You forgive yourself with stories. You judge others with finality. You construct a you who is always right after the fact. So again, who is that in the mirror? A face you recognize? Or a character you've been performing for so long that even your nervous system can't tell the difference anymore? Think about this. If someone else watched a movie of your life, Would they see a protagonist, or just a string of accidents being covered up by desperate explanations? Now ask yourself, why the you that you're imagining right now, the one who's reflecting, nodding, maybe even resisting this, feels more real than all the other versions of you that have come before? Who is observing this moment? Who is choosing which thoughts to believe? Who keeps looking in the mirror, even though nothing has ever really looked back? And when it finally does, will you recognize it? Or will it be the first time you realize you've never actually seen yourself? Section 2. Your thoughts are not yours. The myth of internal origin. You trust your thoughts because they feel private, because they happen inside, because they carry your voice, your vocabulary, your rhythm. But let's peel this open. When exactly did you choose your first language? You didn't. It was downloaded into you, one phrase at a time, during a stage when your brain hadn't even fully formed the capacity for critical filtering. Every word you know, every grammatical structure, every emotional association with a phrase like, I'm sorry or I love you, all of it was written into you before you could comprehend consent. And now, those same foreign words are what you use to think with. You are thinking with a toolset you didn't design, with vocabulary attached to cultural scaffolding you didn't build. You think in borrowed language, which means your very thoughts are filtered through systems you didn't choose, still feel sovereign. In 2007, a landmark experiment by neuroscientist John Dillon, Haynes used fMRI to show that your brain makes decisions up to 7 seconds before you become aware of making them. In other words, what you call free will is just a delayed notification from your subconscious. When you think, I'm going to move my finger, your brain has already cued the action. You are not the decision maker. You are the narrator catching up to the plot. But even that narration, that inner voice, it's not unified. You don't have a single inner voice. You have conflicting voices, constantly vying for control. Psychoanalyst Julian Jaynes called it the bicameral mind, the idea that ancient humans didn't think the way we do, but heard inner commands as external gods. Not metaphorically, literally, and perhaps you still do, but your God now sounds like your father, your teacher, your favorite influencer. Your self-talk is a chorus of ghosts, and you're still calling it you. Go deeper, every preference you claim. Music, colors, humor, morality is a product of environmental priming. Studies on mere exposure effect show that you like what's familiar, not because it's better, but because it doesn't trigger your fear centers. That song you love so much, you heard it enough times to stop flinching, then called it taste. In 1965, neuroscientist Jose Delgado stopped a charging bull using nothing but a radio signal to the brain. No pain, just control. Now imagine your decisions, subtly nudged by invisible cues. Subliminal messaging isn't science fiction. It's neuroscience fact. Your behavior shifts with smell, color, lighting, temperature. Casinos pump oxygen to keep you awake. Fast food chains use red and yellow because they're neurologically stimulating. Supermarkets play slow music to slow your walking pace and increase buying. Your opinions are shaped the same way. You are not open-minded. You are vulnerable to priming. People shown the word old walk slower afterward. People primed with money act more selfishly. People asked to clean their hands rate themselves as morally superior. These are real studies. Repeated. Confirmed. So again. Where do your thoughts come from? Your brain is not a thinking organ. It is a predicting organ. It constructs a model of the world, updates it with sensory input, and maintains the illusion of continuity. Predictive coding theory proves this. You're not reacting to the world, you're predicting it and adjusting your hallucinations to match. What you call now is a delayed, fabricated guess. That itch on your arm? That was half a second ago. The feeling of making sense. Of this sentence? Constructed in layers. Like a movie edited in real time, where you believe the protagonist is improvising. But if you are not the origin of your thoughts, your feelings, your preferences, or your decisions, who is? Is there a homunculus in your skull? A captain piloting the ship? Neuroscience has looked. There is no pilot. There is only processing, synaptic firings, interpreted after the fact. You are a post-event rationalization, happening in real time. Let's take this further. What if you couldn't stop a thought from arising? Try. Try not to think of a white rabbit. Try to unremember a traumatic memory. Try not to feel rage when you're insulted, or fear when you're near a ledge. You don't control what arises. You only notice it and scramble to respond. Your thoughts think themselves. You are merely the echo, but the echo believes it's a song. Now recall a belief you hold strongly, something you're sure of. A nodal stance, a political position, a view about yourself. Ask, did you choose it or did you absorb it? Could you believe the opposite right now? Could you flip the switch? No. And it's not belief. It's conditioning. And if every thought is conditioned, every reaction prescripted, every preference inherited, then what are you but the sum of every influence you failed to recognize? When you look into the mirror of your mind, are you looking at yourself or just watching a play where you forgot you were cast without audition? And if that's true, then who exactly is the one hearing this voice in your head right now? Time isn't real, and you're already dead. Close your eyes. Breathe. Feel this moment. Hold it. Now lose it, because it's already gone. You tell yourself you're in the present, that the past is memory and the future is anticipation. But neither exist outside your mind. You've never touched the present moment. You've only watched it rot. Let's start with the simplest lie you live inside. That time flows. It doesn't. Physics has known this for a long time. Einstein called it the stubborn illusion. In special relativity, simultaneity collapses. Two observers moving at different speeds will disagree about what's happening. Now, one person's present is another's past. The universe doesn't care. There is no privileged now. Time doesn't tick forward like a metronome. There's no cosmic clock guiding your heartbeat or syncing your regrets. All moments exist. Always have. You move through them like a flashlight scanning across a photograph. Your future already exists. So does your death? This isn't science fiction. It's block universe theory, one of the leading models of space-time. The past, present, and future are equally real. Your sense of time's passage is just a neurological artifact. Your brain is trapped in entropy, riding the wave of increasing disorder and calling it progress. But it gets worse. You don't even perceive this present in real time. Everything you sense is lagged. By the time your brain processes a sound, a color, a touch, the world has already moved on. You're stitched together from old signals, hallucinating coherence. Benjamin Libet's experiments showed that your awareness of decisions happens after your brain begins executing them. So even your perception of now is late. You are watching your own past and mistaking it for control, what you call your life. It's playback. Now look at memory. It should be your anchor, your proof that time existed. But it's not. You remember nothing as it happened. Every time you retrieve a memory, you rewrite it. You add new emotions. You lose details. You insert faces that were never there. You distort cause and effect. Memory is not an archive. It's a story told by a liar, and that liar lives in your skull. Neurologist Oliver Sacks documented patients who confabulated entire biographies. complete with timelines and emotional arcs, all false, all believed. And they functioned. They got dressed, spoke fluently, even consoled others. They were human beings with fabricated pasts. How is that different from you? If your memory is fiction, where is your past? And if your future already exists, where is your freedom? Let's go deeper. Thermodynamics tells us that the arrow of time, the reason we experience a before and after, comes from entropy. Things fall apart. Systems move from order to chaos. But entropy doesn't move time. Time doesn't move at all. We do. We exist inside frames of increasing entropy because we're built to perceive survival. Our minds are tuned to notice danger, to construct continuity. You don't perceive time, you perceive change. You don't feel seconds, you feel threats. You are not living through time. You are decaying within it. And when you sleep, when consciousness pauses, time becomes meaningless. 8 hours vanish in an instant, or stretch into dreams that feel like days. Time bends, collapses, evaporates, reforms. So what makes you think it was ever real? A clock? It's just a machine that counts motion, a rhythm that mimics flow. But flow is an illusion. Julian Barber, a British physicist, argues that time doesn't exist at all, that the universe is made of nows, static configurations of the entire cosmos. You don't move through time. You jump between frames, like film, like death disguised as motion. And if that's true, then you never change. You only appear in different poses. Each version of you frozen in a frame, trapped in a photograph you mistake for motion. This is why free will breaks, if every moment is already etched into space-time. What exactly are you choosing? Not direction, not outcome, not pace. You're just experiencing, and then forgetting. And when you die, which in one space-time slice you already have, you won't know it, because the you that's dead no longer holds continuity. The you reading this has already died infinitely. In other slices, other timelines, other deterministic patterns you mistake for progress. But you still feel alive, because this flicker of consciousness is momentarily aware of itself, like a match burning in a vacuum. Aware, beautiful, doomed, and alone. You tell yourself the past is gone, but your birth is still happening. Your first kiss is still hanging in the air. The worst thing you've done is still echoing, and your body somewhere is already rotting. So if time isn't real, why are you still waiting to live? The self-destruction code, why you're wired to undo yourself. You wake up each day assuming your body wants to survive, that your mind is designed to protect you, that somewhere inside your biology is a primal urge to preserve. That's not entirely true, is it? If survival were the core directive, explain this. Why do you procrastinate on the very things that keep you alive? Why do you sabotage relationships? Why does your mind whisper cruel things about your worth? Why do your own hands, some nights, feel like enemies? What if the real truth is worse? What if the human mind, your mind, is wired to collapse? Start with this. Every system has a kill switch. From bacteria to black holes, everything contains the seeds of its own undoing. In biology, it's called apoptosis-programmed cell death. Your body doesn't just allow cells to die, it requires it. Your fingers, for instance, are only separated because the cells between them self-destructed during development. You were sculpted by suicide. Your brain obeys similar logic. Neurons die in mass during adolescence, in a process euphemistically called neural pruning. The mind refines itself through destruction. And when that process goes wrong, when the mind resists the blade, it can't evolve. You get stagnation. You get pathology. Now let's turn inward. You tell yourself the thoughts that hurt are just thoughts. But your body doesn't think so. When you replay humiliation, regret, or shame, your cortisol spikes. Your immune system weakens. Your digestive system shuts down. Your heartbeat accelerates. You're not imagining the damage. You are living inside a biochemical trauma loop, and you call it overthinking. But even deeper than stress lies the death wish. Psychologists have known it for a century. Freud called it thanatos, the death drive, a counterbalance to the life instinct. He observed that people repeatedly return to the source of their trauma, compulsively reenact failure, sabotage peace, and chase extremes that lead to ruin. You've done this. The toxic relationship you couldn't stop orbiting. The habit you knew would break you. The impulse to hurt someone just to see what would happen. There's a part of you, ancient, buried, that is not here to heal. It is here to collapse, beautifully, in full view of your consciousness. You're not malfunctioning. You're performing your design. Now, consider the pervasive thought suppression rebound effect, first described by Wigner in 1987. If you try to suppress a thought, don't think about death, for example, your brain ensures you think about it more. It returns stronger, louder. You become addicted to avoidance. And your mind feeds on that resistance. Like oxygen. You are haunted by. What you flee. It's not metaphor. It's structure. Your default mode network, the part of your brain active when doing nothing, is highly active during rest. But it's not idle. It replays your regrets. It imagines catastrophes. It constructs social scenarios in which you are humiliated, rejected, forgotten. Evolution built it to anticipate danger. But in modern isolation, it becomes a recursive loop of psychological erosion. You lie in bed, scrolling, staring, breathing, and your mind deconstructs you for sport. And it does this because the system favors entropy. Not metaphorical entropy, literal entropy. Your brain consumes 20% of your energy at rest. Maintaining the illusion of stability is metabolically expensive. When depressed people sleep all day or think slowly or forget things, it's not weakness. It's efficiency. The system is choosing degradation over combustion. The death drive is not dramatic. It is logical. Now look at human history. Every civilization that built itself on principles of order, reason, or ethics eventually turned the sword inward. The French Revolution ate its philosophers. The Roman Republic collapsed into empire and spectacle. The Enlightenment led to industrial warfare. Every utopia you can name, from Jonestown to Silicon Valley, contains its own apocalypse. Because humans, when given peace, will manufacture destruction. Just ask the part of you that ruins good days with imagined catastrophes. Or the part of you that gets sad after something wonderful, because now you know it will end. Or the part of you that stares at tall buildings, not with awe, but with a quiet urge to jump. That urge has a name, the call of the void, l'appel du vide. Almost everyone hears it. That flicker in your brain that wonders, what if I just let go? It's not psychosis. It's programming, because even at your highest moments, joy, love, creation, a shadow follows. This won't last. Nothing does. So your mind does what it always does. Anticipates the fall. Pre-grieves. Destroys the temple before it can be desecrated. Better to collapse yourself than to be collapsed by the world. It feels like protection. It's not. It's decay disguised as control. And when you lie there, staring at the ceiling, blinking through midnight, the voice that whispers, what if none of this matters? Isn't an intruder. It's homegrown. It's a product of the same architecture that built your name, your pride, your language. The same scaffolding that constructed you also contains the blueprints for your ERASU, RE. So when you sabotage your peace, are you failing? or are you obeying? You were manufactured, and you've never had a thought of your own. Sit still. Don't move. Let your muscles relax. Breathe softly. Now ask, what part of you is you? Your body? It's a collaboration of bacteria, viruses, and fungal colonies. To 90% of the cells in your body are not human. Your thoughts? They emerge from chemicals and circuits you can't access. Your desires? They shift based on hormones, blood sugar, and what song happened to play before this one. So what part is you? Where is the line? Let's cut deeper. In 1976, Richard Dawkins published The Selfish Gene, and though you may have heard it summarized 1,000 times, you probably missed the most disturbing part. Evolution doesn't care about you. You're not the point. You're a vessel, a delivery system for DNA, a protein suit walking around to ensure molecule survival. You were not born for meaning. You were constructed for replication. Everything you think of as you, your fears, tastes, ethics, relationships, can be traced back to this molecular imperative. You call it instinct. You call it love. But beneath the poetry is a machine. You were manufactured, and the assembly line began before you were conscious. Your language was coded for you. Your preferences were sculpted by the first smells and touches you encountered. The taste of your mother's milk set your later cravings. The rhythm of your father's footsteps set your sense of safety. Even your accent, the voice you use. In your head, to narrate reality was never chosen. It was given. Studies in developmental psychology show that by the time you're 5, your core emotional landscape is already set. Whether you tend toward fear, guilt, pleasure-seeking, or control, it's baked in before memory. You think you're learning to be yourself. You're just unwrapping a package. You mistake unpacking for agency, but your core operating system was installed by someone else. And now you spend the rest of your life trying to debug it, not even knowing where the code ends and the virus begins. And those beliefs you're so sure of, you inherited them. Research on political ideology, for example, shows that it's largely genetically influenced, conservative or liberal, religious or secular. Twin studies reveal a disturbing consistency. You think you chose your worldview. In reality, your nervous system was tuned to respond to threat and novelty in specific ways. The rest is costume. Cultural costume, intellectual costume, aesthetic costume. And yet, you defend these costumes as if they were your skin. Even the ideas you believe you discovered on your own came through language, through media, through exposure. The concept of individuality imported. The value of freedom modeled. Your dream job, your type, your idea of success. All prefabricated options from a cultural menu you never asked to be handed. You think you're building a life. You're filling in blanks. Even your sense of morality is malleable. You believe certain things are right and wrong, but studies show you will abandon them under pressure. In the Milgram experiment, people willingly shocked others to dangerous levels just because a figure of authority told them to. They cried, they sweated, they hesitated, but they obeyed. You think you wouldn't, but everyone thinks that your obedience circuits run deeper than your conscience. And it's not your fault, because the mind you think you're piloting was built under duress. Childhood trauma, neglect, subtle parental expectations. These shaped your threat response, your coping mechanisms, your capacity for love or detachment. When you flinch from intimacy, it's not preference. It's programming. When you lash out in a fight and later say, "I didn't mean that," you're not lying. You're reporting the presence of a part of you, one you didn't invite, speaking through your mouth like a squatter in your house. You are not the sole inhabitant of your mind. You are a parliament, a mob, a chemical democracy full of conflicting agendas. You don't think. You negotiate. You compromise. You react. You perform damage control. And yet, every morning, you wake up and declare, "This is who I am." But who is I? You weren't born a blank slate. You were born with a half-written script, cast into a play mid-scene, told nothing of the plot, and then punished for forgetting your lines. And the most brutal part? You internalized the punishment. You started policing yourself. You started narrating your choices as though they were free. You learned to say, "I wanted this," even when the wanting was implanted. So let's try again. What part of you is truly yours? The fear? The shame? The pride? The guilt? The voice in your head that says, "This is ridiculous"? Or the one that's starting to tremble? If you peeled away every influence, every gene, every memory, every borrowed idea, what would be left? Would anything be left? Or have you always just been a story someone else started? Memory is a lie, and you are an archive of fiction. You believe your memories are sacred, that they make you who you are, that your past is a coherent, unfolding story, stitched together by time and experience. But what if it's all just a well-edited myth? What if you've never remembered anything correctly? Let's start with the illusion that memory is retrieval, that when you recall your childhood bedroom, your first kiss, your mother's voice, you are accessing stored footage, dusty VHS tapes in your mental attic. But your brain is not a recording device. It is a reconstruction device. Every time you remember something, you are rebuilding it. And each rebuild introduces new errors. This has been proven again and again. In 1974, Elizabeth Loftus conducted a study that shattered the credibility of eyewitness memory. Participants watched a video of a car crash. Some were asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Others were asked the same question, but with the word hit. The group given the word smashed reported higher. Speeds and days later, falsely remembered seeing broken glass, though there was none. Language didn't just influence memory, it rewrote it. You do this to yourself every day. You remember how someone made you feel, not how they actually behaved. You remember betrayal with more clarity than kindness. You remember suffering in HD and joy in static. Your trauma memories are warped by cortisol and fear encoding. They get sharper, yes, but also less reliable. The emotional color bleeds over everything. You begin to remember what you felt, not what actually happened. And your brain doesn't care about accuracy. It cares about coherence, so it edits. Silently, elegantly, devastatingly. You forget entire conversations. Then later, remember having said something you never said. You insert someone into a memory where they didn't exist. You remember the outline of a vacation, but the days blur together. You're left with snapshots, stitched together by confidence, not truth. This phenomenon is called the misinformation effect, and it doesn't just happen once. It accumulates. Every time you retrieve a memory, you risk contaminating it. You rewrite it with new data, new context, new emotion. And then you believe it more strongly than ever. You are gaslighting yourself constantly. Now consider this. If all memories are reconstructed and every reconstruction changes the original, then what is your first memory? Studies show that early childhood memories are almost entirely fabricated. What you remember from age 2 or 3 is likely a story told by someone else, a photograph you've seen too many times, or a dream that got encoded as real. Childhood amnesia is a known cognitive fact. Most people can't recall anything accurately before the age of 3 or 4. So your foundational memories? Built on fog, and yet they guide your sense of self. You believe you've always been like this, that you were a shy child. Section 6. Memory is a lie, and you are an archive of fiction. You believe your memories are sacred, that they make you who you are, that your past is a coherent, unfolding story, stitched together by time and experience. But what if it's all just a well-edited myth? What if you've never remembered anything correctly? Let's start with the illusion that memory is retrieval. That when you recall your childhood bedroom, your first kiss, your mother's voice, you are accessing stored footage, dusty VHS tapes in your mental attic. But your brain is not a recording device. It is a reconstruction device. Every time you remember something, you are rebuilding it. And each rebuild introduces new errors. This has been proven again and again. In 1974, Elizabeth Loftus conducted a study that shattered the credibility of eyewitness memory. Participants watched a video of a car crash. Some were asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Others were asked the same question, but with the word hit. The group given the word smashed reported higher. Speeds and days later, falsely remembered seeing broken glass, though there was none. Language didn't just influence memory, it rewrote it. You do this to yourself every day. You remember how someone made you feel, not how they actually behaved. You remember betrayal with more clarity than kindness. You remember suffering in HD and joy in static. Your trauma memories are warped by cortisol and fear encoding. They get sharper, yes, but also less reliable. The emotional color bleeds over everything. You begin to remember what you felt, not what actually happened. And your brain doesn't care about accuracy. It cares about coherence, so it edits. Silently, elegantly, devastatingly. You forget entire conversations. Then later, remember having said something you never said. You insert someone into a memory where they didn't exist. You remember the outline of a vacation, but the days blur together. You're left with snapshots stitched together by confidence, not truth. This phenomenon is called the misinformation effect, and it doesn't just happen once. It accumulates. Every time you retrieve a memory, you risk contaminating it. You rewrite it with new data, new context, new emotion. And then you believe it more strongly than ever. You are gaslighting. Language is a prison, and it has already trapped your mind. You believe language sets you free, that it gives form to your thoughts, lets you communicate, connect, dream. But what if the opposite is true? What if language didn't liberate your mind, but caged it? Language didn't emerge as a tool of self-expression. It evolved as a tool of control, to label the world, to define it, to limit it. And once your brain absorbed these symbols, categories, and false boundaries, your perception of reality changed forever, not became clearer, became smaller. You were born into pure experience. For the first year of your life, you didn't name anything. You didn't say blue or pain or mother. You felt. You absorbed raw, undivided sensory input. No categories, no borders, just the full flood of being. And then they started teaching you words. They told you that a red apple and a red fire truck were the same color, though they were not. That an orange and a carrot shared a name, even though one is juicy and round and the other brittle and sharp. You learned to flatten the world into vocabulary, to compress infinite variation into manageable syllables. You learned to ignore the real in favor of the name. And over time, the name became reality. This is not a metaphor. It's neurolinguistics. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, backed now by modern cognitive science, shows that the language you speak determines the way you perceive space, time, color, agency, and even emotion. Russian speakers see more shades of blue than English speakers. Hopi speakers, whose language lacks tenses, perceive time not as a line, but as a flow. In Japanese, the verb drop can exist without an agent. The cup dropped, rather. Then he dropped the cup. As a result, Japanese speakers are less likely to assign blame. Language doesn't just describe thought. It creates a dot, so what thoughts are you unable to think? Because your language doesn't contain the tools? How many perceptions have been edited out before you even knew they were possible? Now, consider this. Every word is a category, but no two things in that category are ever identical. Think of the word tree, a palm, an oak, a pine, a bonsai. They're all wildly different, yet crammed into the same mental folder. Language makes you blind to difference. It forces false sameness, it lets you function, but at the cost of accuracy, and that cost is high, because the moment you name something, you kill its uniqueness. You see the concept, not the object. You stop seeing this tree and see only tree. You stop seeing the actual face of the person in front of you and see only friend, stranger, enemy, lover. You replace them with an internal dictionary entry. You're not talking to people. You're talking to labels inside your own head. And what about yourself? You call yourself me, I, a name, a history, a list of traits. But these are also just words. You mistake the word I for a unified self. You forget that the voice narrating your life is just a linguistic hallucination, a script, written in your childhood and performed daily out of habit. The Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna said, "When we analyze the self, it disappears." He meant that once you remove the labels, gender, name, age, job, belief, there is no you left defined. Just experience, just sensation, but no narrator, no entity, and yet you're addicted to narration because it gives you control. By naming, you claim power over objects, over memories, over yourself. But that power is fake. The world doesn't obey language. You can call a fire beautiful or terrifying, but the flame doesn't change. You can name your sadness growth, but it doesn't. Make the pain go away. Language gives you the illusion of mastery, but reality is not made of words, and it never was. Think of dreams. In dreams, logic collapses. Language stutters. You move from room to room without transition, speak without grammar, feel truths without needing to name them. And then you wake up and immediately try to narrate the dream, to translate it into language. And in doing so, you destroy it. Dream cannot survive the translation, and neither can you. Because your raw experience, your fears, your hopes, your rage, your love, must now pass through the tiny bottleneck of grammar, syntax, and vocabulary. You have to make sense of yourself in words, and whatever doesn't fit the vocabulary gets deleted. You erase yourself daily just to stay intelligible. And what's more, language doesn't belong to you. You didn't create it. You inherited it, colonially, culturally, violently. The very language you think in was likely imposed on your ancestors. It replaced indigenous speech. It encoded gender roles. It dictated what feelings were acceptable to express. It taught you what to hide. So when you speak, when you think, you're not expressing freedom. You're performing obedience. You are a marionette for dead GRAMMARIANS. And yet, here you are, using words to understand this. To try and escape the trap with the trap itself. So ask yourself, if the cage is made of language, how would you ever describe freedom? You are being observed, and you were built to perform. You think you are alone right now. Quiet, private, honest with yourself. But you're not. Even in solitude, you are performing. Even in the dark, you are watched not by a god, not by technology, not by surveillance states or spirits. Something more invasive. something deeper. You are being observed by a part of yourself that you did not choose. A split in your psyche, a mirror that never turns off. The internal witness. Psychologists call it the imaginary audience, a phenomenon in which individuals imagine that they are constantly being watched and judged by others. It's strongest in adolescence, but it never really leaves. You talk to yourself as if someone else is listening. You think in sentences with emphasis, tone, moral framing, as if your thoughts are being read, and maybe they are, but not by someone else, not by the part of you that split off the moment. You realized other people had opinions. This isn't imagination, it's structure. Your mind doesn't form as a single voice. It emerges as a social battlefield. A child learns to behave by simulating judgment. What would Dad think if I did this? Would they laugh at me if I said that? And over time, those voices embed. They become you, not guests, residents. And you stop questioning them. You think you're acting freely, but you're playing to an audience that lives inside your skull, and the performance never ends. You perform your identity, your beliefs, your kindness, your rebellion. Even your privacy is staged. When you cry alone, part of you watches. When you achieve something, part of you imagines who will approve. You rehearse conversations that will never happen. You win arguments in your head. You script how people will react to your transformation, but it never satisfies. Because the audience isn't real, and it's also never silent. This observer critiques everything. Your posture, your choices, your silence. It doesn't clap. It glares. And the worst part? It's modeled from real people. Your mother's disapproval, your teacher's indifference, that stranger who laughed at you once 10 years ago. Their faces faded, but their voices remain. You are still trying to prove yourself to ghosts. Now think of social media. You believe you post for others. But what if you're actually posting for this internal observer? To prove that you exist, that you matter, that you are attractive, successful, clever, evolving. Even the act of not posting, the curated silence, is a performance. You are not living. You are documenting, staging, publishing, branding. You have become your own publicist, your own PR firm. And when you close the app, the performance continues. You think about how you looked when you walked past that mirror, how you sounded in the conversation, how they perceived your joke. You obsess over their silence, but what you're really reacting to is your own imaginary analysis of their reaction. You're not interacting with people. You're interacting with your theory of their judgment. And all of this traces back to something primal, your brain's social monitoring system. You evolved in tribes, in small groups where exile meant death. So your brain adapted to constantly scan for social approval. It's baked into your neurology. The default mode network, when not occupied, simulates social scenarios, imagines faces, judges motives. It doesn't rest. Even your dreams rehearse conversations. You have never truly been alone, even in your head. And what's left of your authentic self? Buried. Because authenticity is dangerous. It can be rejected, mocked. So the self you show, even to yourself, is filtered. You suppress the intrusive thought. You deny the deviant urge. You rationalize the impulse. You rewrite the memory. You sterilize the raw. And now, you don't even know what's real anymore. Is your smile yours? Or a copy of the one that once got praise? Is your sadness real? Or just a reenactment of the pain that got attention? Is your anger authentic? Or a mask for humiliation you're afraid to name? The line has blurred. You have rehearsed yourself so many times. You've forgotten who was supposed to show up. And if every action is monitored, every thought filtered, every identity performed, Then who exactly are you performing? For? And what will happen when the audience finally goes silent? Free will was a marketing slogan, and you are a clock with amnesia. You believe you make choices, that the small daily decisions, coffee or tea, this route or that, stay or leave, say it or stay quiet, are yours. That you exists who observes, evaluates, and then acts. But this belief is a costume, a hallucination, a desperate clinging to the idea that the steering wheel in your hands is connected to the road dot. single quotes T dot start here. In 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet performed an experiment that should have shattered the concept of free will forever. Subjects were asked to flex their wrist whenever they felt like it, and to report the exact moment they decided to move. What Libet found was stunning. The brain began preparing the movement hundreds of milliseconds before the subject consciously decided to move. You decide after the decision has been made, and the same is true for more complex choices. In 2008, Haynes and colleagues used fMRI to predict participants' decisions 7 seconds before they were aware of making them. Your brain is running the show. Your consciousness is a PR manager, issuing press releases after the fact. You don't choose. You rationalize. Let's strip it down further. You didn't choose your genetics. You didn't choose your parents, your country, your language, your nervous system, your first trauma. You didn't choose how your brain handles stress, or love, or loss. You didn't choose what foods disgust you, or what smells trigger nostalgia. You didn't choose the neural pathways formed in your first few years, the ones that now dictate how you react. Where is the choice? You walk into a room and choose where to sit, but that choice is shaped by countless microfactors: lighting, temperature, past associations with corners or openness, what color the chair is, whether it reminds you of your grandmother's living room. And all of that happens beneath consciousness. Are a puppet. The strings are just too thin to see? Still resisting? Try this. Stop your next thought. Not after it arises, before it does. Prevent it from appearing. Stop the next memory, the next craving, the next image your mind coughs up. You can't. They arise unbidden, like waves. You might redirect them after they arrive, but by then, it's too late. The clock already ticked. Now ask yourself, when you choose, what are you choosing from? A menu of options you didn't write. When you pick a career, you're picking from roles that exist. When you fall in love, you're reacting to biological drives and attachment patterns laid down before memory. Even rebellion is not freedom. It's a programmed reaction against another program. A loop disguised as a stand. You are a recursive function mistaking itself for a god. And then there's the illusion of moral choice. The belief that we choose good or evil, that we deserve praise or blame. But studies show that criminal behavior correlates with brain damage, head trauma, childhood abuse, neurochemical imbalances. Remove these variables and crime drops. So, where exactly is the evil? And where is the free will and virtue? When people act morally, it's often because of empathy, but empathy is a neural trait, unevenly distributed. The sociopath doesn't lack goodness. He lacks the hardware to perceive pain in others. You do not choose your compassion. You inherit it. Like eye color, even the very feeling of agency, the sense that I did this, is just that. Feeling. The brain can simulate it. In phantom limb syndrome, amputees feel pain in a limb that isn't there. In alien hand syndrome, a person's hand moves without their consent, and they watch it act against their will. The brain is capable of separating intention from action. You just rarely notice until the curtain slips. Now, consider determinism. If the universe is governed by physical laws, and your brain is made of particles obeying those laws, then your thoughts are the result of prior states. A domino effect starting at the Big Bang. You didn't light the fuse. You are the firework, unaware of ignition. But I feel free. You say dot, so does the compass needle dot. It feels like it's pointing north, because it must. Your sensation of freedom is not proof of freedom. It's a side effect of ignorance, of not knowing all the causes that shape the choice. You are a deterministic machine with a narrative generator strapped to its back. And this is where the horror deepens. If you're not choosing, then what? Is guilt? What is pride? What is identity? If every action is the consequence of chemistry and circumstance, then punishment becomes cruelty and praise becomes noise. Your sense of being a good person or a bad one collapses into stochastic arithmetic dot. You are not a soul navigating a path. You are a path, pretending to be a navigator dot. And if you let that in, really let it in, then everything begins to fracture dot responsibility, dot meaning, dot self, dot all crumble under the weight of causality. And still, you'll wake tomorrow and say, I've decided to change. But if change is real, who made the choice? The mirror lies, and you've never seen your own face. You walk past a mirror and recognize yourself. You smile. You frown. You adjust your posture or your hair or your clothes. You believe this reflection is you, but it isn't. You've never seen your face, not once. You've seen reflections, shadows, interpretations, filtered images, warped by physics and psychology, compressed into flatness, reversed left to right. You think it's a window. It's a painting. And it lies. What you see in the mirror is not how others see you. What you see in photos is not how you look. What you feel about your appearance isn't based on truth. It's based on memory, trauma, repetition, and expectation. You don't see your body. You see your relationship to it dot, and that relationship is built on sand. Let's start with something physiological. When you look at your reflection, you are seeing a reversed image. Your left becomes your right, but your brain has gotten used to this reversed self. So when you see yourself in a photograph, unflipped, you feel discomfort. You might even say, I don't look like that. But you do. That's how everyone else sees you. The stranger you ignore in the photograph is the one who walks through the world. The reflection you cherish is a flipped fiction. This is called the mere exposure effect. You prefer things you are familiar with, including your own face. So the reversed version becomes the real one. Everything else feels wrong. You are emotionally bonded to a false image. You are loyal to your own ghost. Now go deeper. What is a face? A patch of skin and muscle with holes in it. 2 eyes, a mouth, nostrils, flesh arranged to carry expression, joy, rage, hunger, fear. But your face isn't fixed. It warps constantly, depending on who's looking. When someone else views you, they see not just light and shape, they see context, emotion, projection dot. You don't have a face. You have many dot. There is no single you being perceived. Your parents see one version, strangers another. A lover sees something else entirely. Their mental images of you are constructed by their brains, not yours. Your face doesn't exist in isolation. It exists in the eye of the other, and every eye builds something different dot. Now ask, which version is real? None dot or worse, all of them. You are a visual Schrödinger's cat, collapsing into shape only when looked at. A flesh hologram, differently rendered by every observer dot, and that includes you. Because your own perception of your face is filtered through your mood, your expectations, your shame. You see what you want to see, or what you fear. Studies show that people with body dysmorphia can't be convinced of reality. because they genuinely see something different. Their brains interpret the visual signal in distorted ways, and you are not immune. Every time you look in the mirror, your emotional state bends the image. You don't see your face, you see your opinion. Even more disturbing, your facial recognition system, the part of your brain that processes faces, is not for recognizing others. It's for survival. Faces carry emotion, threat, alliance, status. And this system fails constantly. You've had dreams where a stranger wore your mother's face. You've misrecognized someone in a crowd. You've walked towards someone thinking it was a friend and recoiled when at WASN your brain guesses. Faces. It fills in gaps. It invents. You might even have prosopagnosia, face blindness, and not know it. It ranges in severity, and many sufferers don't realize they have it. They think they're forgetful, disconnected, but their minds simply can't process faces the way others do. So now ask, how certain are you that you recognize yourself? Really, truly recognize? Now let's shatter something deeper. You think your reflection is passive, that it reflects whatever stands before it. But the moment you look in the mirror, you begin to pose. Subtly, automatically, your spine adjusts. Your face tenses or softens. Your shoulders tilt. You correct. You are not looking at a reflection. You are looking at a performance, even alone, even unobserved. The act of seeing yourself triggers self-monitoring. You step outside. You become, two, the seer and the seen. This internal division is not new. It's ancient. We've always tried to view ourselves from the outside. It's what builds identity. But in the mirror, it becomes a ritual. And what happens if the ritual is broken? People who lose the ability to recognize their own face due to stroke, brain injury, or psychosis develop mirrored self-misidentification. They look in the glass and say, "That's not me." They see a stranger. Their internal witness has decoupled from their physical form. But what if you have simply gone too long without noticing that stranger? What if that sense of this is? Me is not insight, but inertia. Because every time you look, you're not checking your face. You're checking your identity. You're scanning for continuity, for evidence that you still exist, that the mask still fits. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when the mirror shows you something unfamiliar, and the words you use to describe yourself no longer match the shape staring back? What happens when your reflection keeps aging, but your self-story refuses to? How long can you lie to your own face before it stops lying back? Time is a trick, and you're already dead. You check the time. Morning, noon, night. You plan for tomorrow. You reflect on yesterday. You believe time is a line, a forward movement, a journey with a beginning and an end. But that's not what physics says. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is not linear. It is not absolute. It bends, stretches, slows, and in some cases, ceases altogether. Time is relative to speed and gravity, and in certain frames, you will never experience. All events happen simultaneously. This is called the block universe theory. It posits that past, present, and future are equally real, that every moment you've ever lived and ever will live is already written in the structure of space-time. You are not moving through time. You are located within it, just one frozen coordinate among an infinite lattice of events, dot. So when you say, "That happened," you're wrong, dot. It is still happening. Your birth is still unfolding. Your worst moment is still echoing. Your death is already complete. You're not progressing. You're scanning. Your consciousness hopping between pre-existing frames, like a needle skipping across a vinyl record. You think you're alive now. But what does now mean if every now exists at once? And if your death is just as real as your first breath, then haven't you already died? Let's go deeper. Your perception of time is not only warped by physics, it's warped by biology. A 1-year-old experiences a year as a lifetime. A 50-year-old experiences it as a blink. Why? Because time is relative to memory density. The more novel the experience, the more richly it's encoded, and the longer it feels in retrospect. Your first heartbreak lasted forever. Your daily commute disappears. You're not living time. You're recording it, and the tape is getting thinner. Now ask yourself, where is the past? You remember events, but those memories are fallible, fragmented, false. We've already established that. So your past doesn't exist in objects, and it doesn't exist in memory. What you call the past is a story, a draft, a flickering slideshow projected on the back wall of your skull. You say you have a timeline, but time doesn't look like a line dot. It looks like a graveyard, a pile of selves you've abandoned. The version of you that cried in school, the version that believed in God, the one who swore they'd never come back to this place. They're all still inside you, entombed in memory, distorted by nostalgia, decomposing beneath your skin. And yet you walk around saying, "This is who I am." But which you do you mean? The one alive right now? Or the one that existed 5 seconds ago, whose neurons have already shifted, whose thoughts have vanished into the void? Every second that passes, you are not becoming someone. You are ceasing to be someone. You are dying. In layers. This isn't poetic. It's neurological. The self-model in your brain, the part that says I exist, updates constantly. Your identity is a temporary illusion, a narrative stitched together to give continuity to a system that doesn't have any. Split-second decisions, automatic behaviors, unconscious instincts, all of them contradict the story of a stable, choosing you. There is no you across time. Just a flicker, just a process. Just a dream. And what about the future? You think you're moving toward it. But by the time you imagine tomorrow, tomorrow has already changed. The future you that you dream about doesn't exist. And if it does, it is completely unaware of you. The way you are unaware of the sperm that became you, the cells that once split in the dark. You are not becoming someone, you are leaving someone behind. And your brain resists this. It creates the continuity, illusion, the feeling that you have always existed and will always continue to exist, like a thread. But that thread is made of static, of interruptions, of gaps. You sleep, you forget, you black out, you glitch, you suffer trauma, you dissociate. You wake up and don't remember falling asleep. You lose hours, days, years. And yet the illusion remains, because the truth that you are just a ripple of awareness lasting for a few decades at best, doomed to vanish without a trace, is unbearable. So you invent time, linear time, story time, healing time, time that moves forward and redeems and explains and forgives, time that gives meaning to aging, time that allows you to say, I'll get better. But that's not time. That's fiction. There is no forward. There is no later. There is no next. There is only this flicker. And then nothing. So if you've already died in the future, and the past is a collapsed lie, then where exactly do you think you are right now? Your emotions are not yours. They were engineered to control you. Feel angry, sad, joyful, ashamed. You believe these emotions are real, that they rise from some authentic, unfiltered core within you, that they are yours. They're not. Emotions are tools of biological manipulation, of evolutionary coercion. You are not feeling. You are being steered. Start here. Emotions evolved as mechanisms to control behavior, not to express identity. Fear makes you run. Lust makes you chase. Guilt makes you obey. Disgust makes you avoid. These were not chosen traits. They were selected. Natural selection doesn't care about truth. It cares about survival. And you are the product of what? Survived. Your ancestors who felt crippling anxiety when excluded from the group? They survived because exclusion meant death. Your ancestors who felt shame after breaking rules? They survived because conformity meant safety. The ones who didn't feel these things? They didn't make it. You did, but not by choice. You are designed to feel what you feel. And your feelings, the ones that feel most personal, most human, are algorithms, neurological responses built to enforce behaviors that served someone else's purpose. Natures, societies, authorities. Take guilt. You think guilt is your conscience speaking. But research shows guilt is primarily social. People feel more guilt when others are watching, less when alone. Guilt doesn't exist to make you moral. It exists to keep you in line, to police behavior, to make sure you don't get expelled from the group. It is not ethics. It's programming. Then there's love. You believe love is spontaneous, real, magical. But biologically, love is oxytocin and vasopressin, chemicals that evolved to promote pair bonding. Why? Because infants take a long time to raise and bonded. Parents had a better survival rate. You feel meant to be because your hormones want you to co-parent. The poetry was added later. Even your heartbreak is engineered. Functional MRI scans show that the same regions activated by physical pain are triggered during social rejection. You don't feel heartbroken because you lost a soulmate. You feel it because your brain interprets rejection as a threat to survival. The pain forces you to avoid future isolation. It is a behavior correction mechanism. It's not tragic. It's mechanical. Your sadness, it slows you down, makes you introspect, makes you stay still, which, in hunter-gatherer terms, was a safe strategy after loss or failure. Your rage? It increases blood flow to muscles, makes you act without thinking. Good for battle, bad for modern life. And yet it lingers, triggered by petty slights and imagined status games. You are a zoo of outdated responses, caged inside modern stimuli. Even pride, that gleaming, sacred sense of self-worth, is a reward system. It floods your brain with serotonin when you behave in ways that increase your social rank. It isn't virtue, it's conditioning. Your brain wants you to repeat the behavior that got praise. You think you're growing. You're being trained. And fear? Fear is the loudest lie of all, because your fear system, the amygdala, doesn't distinguish well between real and imagined threats. It fires for a tiger. It also fires for an email, a look, a silence. It evolved for a world that no longer exists. Now it malfunctions. Constantly. And yet, your decisions are ruled by it. You think you're being cautious. You're being hacked. Let's go even deeper. Emotions don't just emerge. They are constructed. According to psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett, emotions are not reactions. They are predictions. Your brain guesses what you should feel based on context, past experience, and bodily signals. It doesn't detect fear. It creates it, like a hallucination, which means you never feel the truth. You feel what your brain expects to feel. That anxiety in your chest, it could be fear, or excitement, or hunger. Your brain labels it based on context. You walk into a meeting, it must be anxiety. You walk into a party, it must be anticipation. The feeling doesn't change, only the label. And once it's labeled, it becomes real. You don't feel to understand. You feel to obey. Now think of emotions in society. you are taught what emotions are appropriate. Boys are taught to suppress tears. Girls are taught to suppress rage. These aren't universal truths. They're cultural edits. In some tribes, grief is expressed with violent screaming. In others, with silence. The emotion isn't the same. The training is dot, so what you feel is not just biology, it's indoctrination. You feel what you were taught to feel dot, and now you weaponize those emotions against yourself. You feel shame for being angry, guilt for being sad, pride for pretending. You perform, being okay, to make others comfortable. You confuse politeness with kindness. You confuse compliance with morality. You confuse the silence of your own body with peace. And you ask yourself, why do I feel this way? But the better question is, who wants me to feel this way? And what part of you exactly still believes that the feelings in your chest are yours? Sleep is not rest. It's rehearsal for death. You close your eyes at night and think you are resting. That sleep is a reprieve, a place where the mind settles, the body recovers, and the soul drifts into calm. But that story is another lullaby, a narcotic tale told to children, so they stop asking what really happens when the lights go out. You don't fall asleep, you vanish. Every night, your consciousness dissolves. Your identity unravels. The continuous stream of you is broken, interrupted, deleted. And when you return, you don't even remember the interruption. You awaken believing it was smooth. But where were you? Where did you go? You were nowhere. You were nothing. Sleep is not a break. It is a blackout dot. And if consciousness defines your sense of self, your awareness, your thought, your observation of the world, then every night, yourself ceases to exist. And you don't even panic dot, you crave it. You ache for it. You fear death. But you welcome its rehearsal every night with a sigh of relief dot. Now ask yourself, what's the difference? Sleep and death are cousins. The ancient Greeks used the same root for both, thanatos and hypnos, and modern neuroscience agrees when you sleep, your brain disconnects its connection to external stimuli. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational self, goes dark. You're left with chaos, fragmented memories, dreams that don't follow physics, a mind turned inside out, and then nothing dot, no memory dot, no awareness dot. You close your eyes, and reality ceases to exist, not just for you, period. Because if your consciousness is the only thing proving the existence of the world, then the absence of that consciousness is the end of the world, at least from the only perspective that matters. Sleep is your daily apocalypse, and you thank it. But what are you actually doing while unconscious? Your body is running scripts, automatic cycles. The glymphatic system cleans your brain, flushing out toxins. Neural circuits are reactivated in rapid patterns, not to rest, but to simulate. You rehearse dangers, reconstruct failures, remix fears. You dream not to escape life, but to practice surviving it. Dreams are your brain running fear simulations. And it doesn't care about accuracy. The monsters, the drowning, the falling, the betrayal, the being chased. These aren't fantasies. They are stress rehearsals, controlled hallucinations designed to prepare you for pain. Sleep isn't peace, it's training, it's psychological. Boot camp masquerading as silence. And even more disturbing, you don't control what you dream. Your unconscious pulls the strings. It chooses which memory to warp, which face to distort, which regret to resurrect. It shuffles your identity like a deck of cards. Sometimes you are yourself, sometimes not, sometimes a watcher, sometimes a victim. In sleep, you are not the dreamer. You are the dream. And the worst part? You forget 90% of it within minutes of waking, not because it wasn't important, but because you aren't meant to remember. The architecture of sleep is designed to veil its own process, to hide the theater backstage. Because if you remembered everything your unconscious ran you through, you'd never trust yourself again. But you don't remember, so you go on believing you rested. Meanwhile, your brain was staging traumas, rewriting history, and eroding the illusion of your stable self. Let's strip the comfort further. When you go under anesthesia, you don't dream, you don't feel, you disappear. Hours can pass, and when you wake, there is no sense that time existed at all. That is what true unconsciousness feels like. So again, what's the difference between that and death? Only that you expect to return. But what if you didn't? What if one night you lie down and the blackout comes and there is no reboot, no stream, no waking, just the long, slow erasure of you, and worse, no awareness of it? You wouldn't know you are gone. You wouldn't know that anything ever was. Your life would end. And your experience of that ending would be indistinguishable from sleep. You spend a third of your life vanishing, and you call that living? What does that say about the thing you call consciousness, if it can dissolve every night without resistance? And what, exactly, does it mean? That you only feel alive when you are awake? Memory is fiction, and you are the author of lies. You believe your memories define you, that your past is a foundation, that the moments you've survived, your childhood, your triumphs, your traumas, make up a stable thread called identity. But what if memory isn't a recording? What if it's a story that keeps changing? You don't store memories like video. You reconstruct them every single time you recall them. And every time you do, they degrade. They warp. They absorb suggestions, context, emotion, even your mood at the time of remembering. Memory is not a file. It's a performance, and you are rewriting the script every time the curtain rises. In 1974, psychologists Loftus and Palmer ran a now famous study. Participants watched a video of a car crash and were asked how fast the cars were going. Those asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, reported much higher speeds than those asked with the word hit. Even more disturbing, those who heard smashed were more likely to remember broken glass in the video. There was no broken glass, just a suggested word, a single change in framing, and their memory obeyed. You might think you're above this, that your most sacred memories, your first kiss, your worst betrayal, the death that shattered you, are immune. But even the emotional weight of memory is unstable. Neuroscience shows that the act of reconsolidation, remembering something, makes the memory malleable, plastic, vulnerable. And each time you bring it back, you change it. Not intentionally. Automatically, you are corrupting your own past. Now think of your first memory. Are you sure it's yours? Or is it a photo you've seen 1,000 times, paired with a story someone told you when you were 4? Your brain doesn't care. If it's repeated often enough, it gets encoded. Familiarity breeds belief. You can remember things that never happened. Entire events. Entire childhoods. This is called false memory syndrome, and it's not rare. In one experiment, researchers were able to implant false childhood memories in over 30% of participants, just by asking them to remember something that never occurred, along with real memories. Their minds filled in the blanks, because memory is a construction project. And your identity is built on that faulty scaffold. What you remember about your parents, your traumas, your friendships, your failures, these are not facts. They are interpretations, colored by shame, rage, love, fear. And worse, those emotions change. So the memory changes, and so you change. Yourself is not stable. It's a collage of edited scenes. And memory doesn't serve truth. It serves survival. You don't remember things as they were. You remember them in ways that help you function. This is called motivated forgetting. The brain actively suppresses or reshapes certain memories to preserve coherence or sanity. Your unconscious edits what you're allowed to recall, Dot. So what's missing? What have you forgotten? Not accidentally, but purposefully. Maybe a betrayal you committed, a moment of cruelty, an abandonment, a choice that cost someone everything. The mind might hide it, distort it, turn it into a dream, assign it to someone else. It's not guilt. It's strategy, because remembering could fracture you. And yet, the forgotten still lives in you. In your triggers, your phobias, your compulsions, your nightmares. The past you can't name still haunts your behaviors. Your trauma is encrypted, and it leaks. But even the true memories, the ones you believe in the most, are untrustworthy. Because memory is state-dependent. When you're sad, you remember sad things. When you're angry, you recall injustice. The brain prioritizes coherence over accuracy. You're not retrieving memories. You're assembling justifications. And what about dreams? What about those disjointed flashes of memory that show up distorted in your sleep? Old faces in wrong places, timelines shuffled, events rewritten. Those aren't random. That's the real memory, systemed out uncensored, fractured, honest in its dishonesty. And if that's your real past, then what have you been calling your life all this time? A stable you implies a stable history. But if your history shifts every time you recall it, then who are you today? And who will you be tomorrow when the story changes again? If your memories are not consistent, if your past rewrites itself, and what makes you believe you've ever existed the way you remember? Language is a virus, and it hijacked your mind. You speak, and you think you're communicating. You write, and you believe you're expressing truth. You have inner thoughts, and you imagine they come from you. But the words in your head were not born there. You caught them, like an infection, like a parasite that rewires its host to suit its own replication. Language is not a tool. You use Dot. It is a system that uses you. Let's begin with this. You are not born with language. You were born with the capacity for language, a biological vulnerability waiting for an external pattern to infect it. Around age 1, you start mimicking sounds. You don't understand them. You just repeat. You are not inventing language. You are downloading it Dot from that moment on. You become a carrier Dot, and the virus spreads. Language doesn't just describe your world, it creates it. Your perception of time, space, self, and other is shaped by the structure of your grammar. Cultures with no past tense don't obsess over regret. Tribes with no words for directions like left or right don't think in egocentric terms. They orient their bodies by the cardinal directions. Language limits what you can think. This is known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, linguistic relativity. The structure of your language shapes the structure of your thought. If there is no word for it, it becomes nearly impossible to conceive it. You are trapped inside the grammar of your captor. You call it thinking, but most of your thoughts are verbal loops, inner dialogue composed of the very phrases you absorbed from parents, teachers, media, culture. You speak to yourself using borrowed syntax. You explain your feelings with pre-written metaphors. You label your experiences using second-hand terms. You are not thinking. You are repeating. Your mind is a language machine infected with old phrases that hijack meaning and label experience before it can be felt. You think in words. You dream in symbols. You write to clarify. But the words you choose already dictate the conclusion. Language is not neutral. The word freedom feels sacred, but it means different things in different languages. The word truth implies objectivity, but most languages use entirely different constructs to describe belief. Words like love, soul, honor, evil, they do not describe reality. They prescribe emotion. Language is a drug. Each word a tiny injection of belief. Now imagine a world with no language, no words, no names. Could you feel sadness without the word sad? Could you imagine success without having been told what it looks like? Could you even have a self if there were no I to say? Infants don't say. They don't say, mine, not at first. The concept of selfhood emerges slowly as language infects the brain and carves the ego into shape. Before language, the infant does not separate self from world. You learned I the same way you learned chair. It is a label, not a fact, and once labeled, you became the label. But the most sinister part of language isn't how it shapes your mind. It's how it hides itself while doing so. You've stopped noticing the words you use. You say, I feel, as if that phrase reveals truth, but it buries it. I feel disrespected is not a feeling. It is a story, a judgment embedded in a socially learned structure. The true feeling might be pain, shame, fear, but language makes it sound clean, controlled. You say, I know, but all you mean is, I believe something I heard often enough. You say, I want, but that want was shaped by slogans, scripts, and syntax. Language seduces you into thinking it is transparent. It never is. Now think about how language replicates. It's viral. Memes, phrases, quotes, slogans, idioms, sayings that live longer than people. You speak them, post them, tattoo them, preach them. They outlive you. They infect others. Language is not a passive tool. It is an evolving organism, and you are its host. And it has one goal: survival through repetition. When you use language, you are not just expressing yourself. You are spreading the virus. Even now, this paragraph, these thoughts infecting your mind are nothing more than linguistic code. And yet, as you read them, they shape your inner state. They cause reaction, tension, doubt, maybe fear. Language is hacking your brain, and there's no uninstall. You can't think outside of language, because to think is to use it. So what does it mean to be human? If your thoughts are not yours? If the thing you trust most, your inner voice, is a puppet mouthing borrowed phrases, what would remain of you if you finally fell silent? Free will is an illusion, and every choice was already made. You believe you're choosing to read this, that your attention, your interest, your curiosity are active decisions emerging from your will, but you didn't choose. This thought, you didn't choose any of them. They arrived. You don't control your thoughts. You notice them. They appear uninvited, unplanned. They shape you before you even realize they're there. And by the time you recognize them, they've already changed your state, altered your chemistry, and moved your body. You are not thinking, you are being thought. Free will is a myth, and neuroscience has known it for decades. In 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment that would fracture everything we believe about decision-making. Participants were asked to flex their wrists whenever they felt the urge. They reported the moment they consciously decided to act, but EEG scans told a different story. Their brains began preparing the movement a full 300 to 500 milliseconds before they were aware of the decision. Their body had already chosen. Their will was just catching up. This became known as the readiness potential, measurable neural activity that precedes conscious choice. And this wasn't a glitch. It's been repeated, confirmed, expanded upon. More recent experiments show even longer delays, up to 7 seconds before the subject believes they've made a choice. Your decisions are post hoc rationalizations. The you, who believes it is choosing, is simply narrating what's already been done. Think of how you make choices. You say, I'll order the salad instead of the burger. But what made that decision? A memory of guilt? A flash of health advice? A fleeting emotion? A sense of control? A voice in your head telling you what's right? Where did that voice come from? What are the origins of your preferences? Your taste in food? In love? In art? In ideology? You didn't choose any of it. Your genetics, your culture, your traumas, your education, your dopamine thresholds, your gut microbiome, all of it shapes your preferences. You don't want something. You experience. Wanting. You don't decide to change. You feel the impulse and retroactively justify it. Free will is retrospective fiction. A trick your brain plays so you don't feel like a puppet. And it works because consciousness comes with a delay. You live 80 milliseconds in the past. By the time you perceive what's happening, it's already happened. You are the echo, not the sound. Even your most sacred choices, love, career, religion, are patterned. Statistically predictable. People raised in a language tend to believe in its stories. People with certain neurotransmitter levels gravitate toward risk or conformity or fanaticism. Twin studies show startling levels of behavioral mirroring, even among siblings raised apart. You don't choose your behavior. You inherit it. Absorb it, and then you defend it as if it were your will. But here's the most unsettling part. Even if you believe in free will, you can't explain it. Where does a decision come from? From a reason? Then it's determined by logic. From emotion? Then it's determined by mood. From intuition? Then it's determined by unconscious forces. From you? But what is you, if not a swirling mix of those same forces? Either your choices are determined, or they are random. But neither path leads to freedom. You say, I could have done otherwise. But how? If you replayed your life, moment by moment, with the same brain, same body, same memories, same mood, would you act differently? If not, then what is choice? And if yes, what was the mechanism that allowed the change? There is none, because the chooser is an illusion. It's a process, a narrative function, a character invented by your brain so it can tell itself a story of agency. But you're not the author. You're not even the reader. You're just in it, reacting, rationalizing, repeating. Even now, as you nod along or recoil, disagreement or resistance is not chosen. It's arising from deeper architecture, from wounds, from teachings, from invisible scripts playing behind your eyes. Are not responsible for your thoughts. You are made of them. And if you never had a single thought you chose, if every action was just a chemical inevitability, then what does it mean to say you ever had a self? Identity is a costume, and you forgot you were wearing it. You say, this is who I am. You carry your name, your preferences, your nationality, your traumas, your taste in music, your politics, your morals, your story, as if they form some coherent structure, a singular you moving forward in time, but peeled just once, and the costume tears. Who you are is not who you think you are. Let's start with the most basic lie. Your name, you didn't choose it. It was assigned, before memory, before language. You didn't ask to be called you, but once it was spoken enough times, you began to respond, and eventually to believe it. That belief became the scaffold. You began to build upon it, slowly, unconsciously. I like this. I hate that. I would never do that. These aren't facts. These are decisions made under duress, from culture, from parents, from early experiences. You call it personality. It's more like sediment, preferences, not yours, morals, programmed opinions, borrowed and mistaken for truth. You didn't grow a self. You assembled one, piece by piece, reaction by reaction, wound by wound. You don't have a stable identity. You have a response pattern shaped by pain, reward, fear, imitation, and repetition. You are not someone. You are some when, a collection of historical weather. And it's always changing dot. So why does identity feel so real? Because your brain needs it to survive dot to predict, to avoid chaos, to simplify. A shifting self is a threat, so the brain locks a version in place. I am introverted. I am strong. I am broken. These are not observations. These are anchors, security blankets, fictions that protect the system from uncertainty. And you confuse consistency with truth. You perform identity because it reduces pain. If you've always been the funny one, you stay funny, even when you feel like dying. If you've always been the strong one, you never ask for help, even as you collapse. The performance kills what it claims to preserve. You become a prisoner of your own costume. And the costume has seams. Think of times you've acted out of character, lost control, said something you didn't mean, felt something you couldn't explain. You called it a mistake, or weakness, or growth. But maybe it was the only time you weren't pretending. Now ask, how many versions of you exist? The one at work, the one with friends, the one when you're alone, the one from 10 years ago, the one in your head, the one in your mother's eyes, the one you show online. They're all different, all real, all you, and none of them are stable. This is called the multiplicity of self, and it's not abnormal. It's reality. There is no core, no single self, hiding underneath, just shifting configurations. You are a modular being, subpersonalities, emotional states, learned roles. A system, not a soul. You say, I was myself again. But which one? And why do you need to keep going back? Here's a deeper fracture. Every identity is built against something. I'm not like them. I'm not like I used to be. The you is created by exclusion. You are defined not by what you are, but by what you've rejected, resisted, survived. Your selfhood is a war, a border dispute. And every time you change, it costs something. Identity loss feels like death, not metaphorically, neurologically. Studies show that people experiencing profound transformation through grief, trauma, awakening show neural patterns similar to mourning. You grieve your old self like a corpse, and yet you mourn the lie because that self never existed. It was a role, a placeholder, a mask you forgot you were wearing. Who are you without it? Not better, not worse. Just unlabeled. And the mind resists that. It claws for definition. Even now, as you read this, it tries to map these ideas onto your existing framework. Yes, I'm that kind of person. Someone who questions things. Someone who understands. That's identity, clinging. Building a new story to avoid the absence of story. Because the void beneath identity is unbearable if you're not your name, not your thoughts, not your history, not your story. Then what are you? What is left when the mask falls? And how long can you keep performing before you forget there was ever someone underneath? The self is a hallucination, and you are the one being dreamed you wake up every morning, assuming there's a you waking up, a continuous self, a stable narrator. The same person who went to sleep last night. But when you examine it, the you behind your eyes, the one reading this now, what do you find? Not a body, not thoughts, Not even memory. You find a strange, silent center, a watcher, an observer, but no core. Because the self you believe in is not real. It's a hallucination. Your brain is generating a convenience, a placeholder, a simulation it runs to make interaction possible. It's not an object. It's not even a thing. It's a process, and it can stop, disappear, shatter, and you won't even notice until it's gone. Start here. The default mode, network, a cluster of brain regions that activates when your mind is at rest, is the seat of the self model. When you're daydreaming, reflecting, imagining the future, or remembering the past, this network is active. When you're fully in the present, meditating, in flow, or facing trauma, it shuts off. And when it shuts off, the I dissolves. You become pure perception. No thoughts, no labels, no self-reference. Just awareness. This isn't spiritual poetry. It's measured neuroscience. You don't have a self. You have a simulation of one. And that simulation is fragile. In cases of depersonalization, people feel detached from their own bodies, as if they're watching themselves from the outside. In Cotard syndrome, they become convinced they are already dead. These aren't delusions. They are glitches, evidence that the self is not stable. It can be turned off like a light switch, and it often is. Think of how often you lose the sense of self in shock, in ecstasy, in pain, in deep concentration. You only notice the self when it returns, like a noise in a quiet room. The rest of the time, it's background static, a trick, a mask, and yet it dominates your life. Your fears are built around protecting it. Your hopes revolve around fulfilling it. Your regrets are anchored in the idea that this you could have done better, could have been more, could have changed, but there is no consistent you to improve. Just a stream of passing moments, strung together by memory and illusion. The philosopher Daniel Dennett called it the narrative center of gravity, the illusion of a self built from story. There is no central point, no core consciousness, just an emergent property, like the swirl of a whirlpool, momentary, local, and gone the instant the current stops. And Buddhist philosophy said it centuries earlier. Anatta, no self, not metaphorically. Literally, what you call I is a dream the brain dreams while awake, and the dream is recursive. The brain watches itself, predicts its own behavior, models its own thoughts, and in doing so, invents a watcher. But the watcher isn't real. It's part of the loop, a hallucination, hallucinating itself. You are the echo of your own echo. And when the hallucination glitches during psychosis, in near-death experiences, on psychedelics, the self shatters, and people report the same thing. There was no one there, just experience, just terror, just nothing. You are not a person having experiences. You are an experience pretending to be a person. And that pretending is so constant, so practiced, that it feels like truth. Perform you without thinking. You anticipate what you would do. You remember what you have done. You imagine what you will become. But all of that is theater. You are a character whose lines are being written as they are spoken. And here's the final fracture. If the self is not real, then no one is. Not your friends, not your family, not your enemies, not your heroes. They too are hallucinations. Simulations generated by your brain to explain the behavior of other organisms. To navigate a social maze, your biology never meant you to survive. You don't know people. You know models of people, and they don't know you, because there is number. You to know, there never was. Only a swirl, only a mask, only a mirror looking at a mirror. So who exactly is reading this now? And if no one is home, who has been pretending all this time? Reality is not what you see. It's what your brain allows you to see. You look around and call it reality. The colors, the objects, the people, the light. It all feels so direct, as though your eyes are windows and the world is just ... out there, but you're not seeing the world. You're seeing a controlled hallucination. That's not metaphor. Your brain doesn't passively receive reality. It constructs it. Every sight, every sound, every touch, every emotion. All of it is synthesized. A fabrication. A best guess based on limited data and internal models. You're not perceiving truth. You're experiencing the version of reality that keeps you alive. Not the full version. Not the accurate one. Just the one that works well enough not to kill you. Let's begin with your eyes. You think you see everything in front of you, but your field of vision is narrow. Your fovea, the part of your retina responsible for sharp central vision, is only the size of a grain of rice. Everything outside that pinhole is blurry. Your brain fills it in. Right now, you're hallucinating. 95% of your visual field. And your blind spot? Where the optic nerve connects to the eye, it has no photoreceptors. You should see a black hole, but you don't, because your brain fabricates content to hide it. You've never seen reality. You've seen a guess and sound. It's worse that your ears detect pressure waves. That's it. And yet, from these vibrations, your brain extracts meaning. Music, words, emotion, danger. But again, it filters what matters, ignores what doesn't. Most frequencies, you'll never hear them. Most details, lost. Your brain does this for a reason. Efficiency. Conscious processing is expensive. The brain takes up 2% of your body weight, but uses 20% of your energy. So it cheats. It creates shortcuts. It hallucinates the world using predictive models and adjusts them only when errors arise. This is the Bayesian brain model. It doesn't perceive the world. It predicts it. You live in expectation, not perception. And that expectation is deeply flawed. Your brain prioritizes survival, not truth. You evolved to detect motion, edge contrast, facial expressions, not to perceive quantum fields or higher dimensions. Bees see ultraviolet. Snakes see infrared. Bats hear in echolocation. You exist in one narrow slice of the thin electromagnetic spectrum. You don't see reality. You see your species. Hallucination of reality. And your personal one is even more narrow. You perceive is shaped by trauma, language, memory, emotion, belief. People with depression literally see less contrast in the world. People on psychedelics report more color, more pattern, more depth, because the predictive filter breaks, and they glimpse what you're usually shielded from. What you call real is just consensual hallucination, a version of the world your nervous system has been trained to accept. So what does that mean for truth? It means there is no raw truth, only interpretation. You don't see a tree. You see a filtered set of shapes and colors, processed by the visual cortex, labeled tree, cross-referenced with your internal concept of trees, tied to memories of safety or fear or warmth. You see an idea, not an object. And pain. Pain is not even in your body. It's in your brain. Phantom limb pain proves this. People feel agony in arms that no longer exist. The wound is gone. The signal persists. So what is real? The nerve? The feeling? The belief? Your brain can make you hurt for no reason. And still you trust it? Still you say, I know what's real? Let's destroy that comfort completely. Think about dreams. In dreams, you see, you hear, you touch, you believe, and it feels real until it doesn't. Then you wake up and say, that wasn't reality, but you believed it fully while inside. So how do you know this isn't another dream? Because it's consistent? So are dreams, because it's shared. So are collective hallucinations, because it feels real. But your feelings are filtered too. You wake each day in a hallucinated model of the world, constructed by a damaged organ, running on limited bandwidth, cross-checked by memory glitches, filtered through emotion. And you call it the real world. How can you be sure? How can you trust anything you perceive if everything you perceive is filtered through a liar? Time doesn't exist. You just needed something to die, and you think time flows, that it moves forward like a river, that the past is behind you, the future ahead, and the present, this moment, is the only thing you truly have. Time is not a river, Dot. It's not flowing, Dot. It's not moving. You are, and you are moving through a fiction. Physics does not support your sense of time. The idea of a ticking cosmic clock, of now slicing forward through an objective reality, is an illusion born from biology. Your brain stitched it together. Your memories gave it shape. Your fear gave it meaning. But there is no now. There is no flow. There is only relative change. Let's begin with Einstein. In 1905, his theory of special relativity broke time into pieces. It proved that time isn't absolute. It's relative to the speed at which you move. Time dilates. It slows down the faster you go. Astronauts on the International Space Station age microseconds slower than you do on Earth. Your clock is lying. Even worse, Einstein's equations have no privileged present. They treat past, present, and future as equally real. The idea that only now exists? That's just your limited perception. In physics, the block universe theory suggests all moments exist simultaneously. The past hasn't gone anywhere. The future isn't waiting. They are already there. You're just not looking at them because you're stuck in a tiny slit of perception, watching a film frame by frame, believing the characters move. But it's not movement. It's memory. Now examine your own experience of time. When you're bored, time crawls. When you're afraid, it stretches. When you're in pain, it stops. You're asleep, it disappears. So how real can it be? If your experience of time is so vulnerable to emotion, then time isn't external. It's generated, constructed in the brain's default mode network, synchronized with the thalamus and the suprachiasmatic nucleus, dictated by light, rhythm, hormone, trauma. Time is felt, not measured. And your feeling is fragile. Ask a trauma survivor. Moments can freeze, seconds can feel eternal, or vanish completely. This is called temporal dysregulation. The brain loses grip on sequence. Cause and effect blur. Days collapse. Time is experienced less like a line and more like a shattered mirror. And yet, we obey it. We count it. We organize our lives around it. We measure worth by what we do with it. Don't waste time. Use your time wisely. Time heals all wounds. But time doesn't heal. Time forgets. The longer something lasts, the more it decays. Memory erodes, pain fades. Not because time cares, but because your mind can't hold the weight forever. Time is a tomb, not a teacher. Even the way you think about your life, as a line from birth to death, is fiction. Your earliest memory is probably from age 3 or 4. Your last one will fade before you die. What about the decades you don't recall? The thousands of hours lost to distraction, repetition, automation? You think you lived them, but you didn't. You are not there. Your body moved through them. Your mind did not. You only exist in the moments you remember, which means most of your life is already gone. That time is not your enemy. It's your mirror. That reflects how little of you is ever truly present, how often you leave, how easily you vanish. Into memory or anticipation. You don't live in time. You live in story. Time is the scaffold you hang the story on. A calendar of regrets and imagined futures, but neither is real. And when the body dies, the story ends. The scaffold falls. The illusion of a timeline collapses into a single, unresolved event. You think death is something that happens later. But what if later doesn't exist? What if time is just a hallway you walk down to? Convince yourself that the door at the end isn't already open. Morality is a mirror, and every monster thinks it's human you. Believe you're a good person, or at the very least, not evil. You have morals. You have lines you wouldn't cross. You feel disgust at injustice, anger at cruelty, compassion for the suffering. You think that means something, but your morality is not yours. It was poured into you, piece by piece, by family, by culture, by stories, by fear. It's a mirror of the system you were raised in. And mirrors don't reflect truth. They reflect whatever stands in front of them. Every war criminal felt justified. Every tyrant believed they were protecting something sacred. Every monster that's ever walked the earth thought they were the hero. And you are no different. Let's begin with the Milgram experiment, Yale University. Ordinary people were asked to administer electric shocks to a stranger for giving wrong answers. The shocks weren't real. The stranger was an actor. But the participants didn't know that. Over 65% of them went all the way to the maxima. Voltage, even when the stranger screamed in pain. Even when he stopped responding. Even when they thought they were killing him. Why? Because someone in a lab coat said, "Please continue." They didn't feel evil. They felt responsible, obedient, moral. They were just doing what they were told. Now ask, what would you do? You'd like to believe you'd walk away. But every generation believes that. And every generation repeats the same atrocities. Not because people are inherently evil, but because morality is context dependent. Change the story, and you change the villain. Consider the Stanford prison experiment. Students, randomly assigned roles of guards and prisoners, descended into sadism in days. Number, real laws, no consequences. Just a game, and they still became cruel. Not because they were bad, because they were allowed to be. Morality is not a light you carry inside. It's a reflection of power, permission, and perception. Change one, and you change the good. What? About cultural morality? Slavery was moral once. So was torture. So was child labor. So was genocide. Legal, justified, blessed by priests, rationalized by scholars, preached by parents. Now you look back in horror, but they didn't. They believed. Just like you believe now. Your outrage at the past is not proof of progress. It's proof of amnesia. You've simply replaced old gods with new norms, new sins, new rituals. Same blindness. Because morality is not about truth. It's about belonging. You don't want to be good. You want to be accepted, approved, righteous. You shape your ethics to fit the tribe. You condemn what the crowd condemns. And when the crowd changes, so do you. Ask yourself, would you hide a fugitive child from the police? Most would say yes, if the police were unjust. But what if you lived in a regime where hiding that child made you the criminal? Then your morality becomes terrorism. Same act. Different context. Suddenly, your goodness becomes treason. This is the core horror. Every action you consider righteous has been used by someone else to justify horror, love of country, used to bomb villages, protecting family, used to justify executions, obeying the law, used to keep people in chains. Even empathy can be weaponized. Study after study shows that we feel more empathy for people who look like us, sound like us, believe what we believe. It's called in-group bias. Your compassion isn't universal. It's tribal. Your morality doesn't serve justice. It serves identity. And that identity can be programmed. So if you were born in a different country, raised in a different language, taught a different religion, lied to by different myths, would you still call your enemies evil? Or would you call yourself a patriot? How many of your moral values are just defensive justifications for the stories you inherited? And if your sense of good and evil can be rewritten with a few well-told lies, then what separates you from the monsters you condemn?